I will let Steve remarry his ex-girlfriend. Get lost, you useless person. With a nasty smile, they spoke to me in a mocking way. Watching them, I wondered why I had tolerated this until now. I understand. I have called for a ride, so I will leave shortly. Saying this, I left my in-laws' house with my belongings that I had packed in advance. They followed me, grinning, saying, "Finally, the nuisance is gone. And now, we can finally find true happiness." Ignoring them, I stepped outside just as my sister's car pulled up in front of the house. What? You must be kidding. The moment they saw my sister getting out of the car, they began to tremble. Their attitudes had completely reversed from before. It seems you have been very fond of my sister. My sister, placing her hand on my shoulder and glaring at them, spoke in a low voice. Are you, Mandy? Yes, that's right. And I will never forgive you. My sister gave a chilling smile, causing Steve Irving to let out a short scream. I was the only one who couldn't grasp the situation, which confused me. It was Aaron who explained the situation to me, who apparently came with my sister. Actually, I am Kelly Irving, a 28-year-old housewife. My parents passed away in a traffic accident when I was still young, leaving my sister Mandy and me to be raised by relatives. From today, you two are my daughters. I'm glad. I've always wanted sweet daughters. It must have been hard for the relatives who suddenly had to take in 2 children. Still, they looked after us sisters with kindness and strictness, for which I am incredibly grateful. I'm glad we became their children. Yes, I think so too. That's why we should live in a way that would not embarrass them. Okay. We promised each other to become people they would be proud of. As a result, my sister became a doctor. I want to be like them. My sister referred to the doctors who had desperately tried to help when our parents had their accident. She studied hard to fulfill her dream of becoming like those doctors. And now she works as a surgeon in a hospital abroad. Kelly, what do you want to do in the future? I want to take over after Dad and Mom. Meanwhile, I wanted to pursue the same career as my parents, who had managed a coffee shop, now run by a family friend, until I could take over. The friend had promised, I will keep the shop running until Kelly can take over. Kelly, have you thought about your career path? Don't hesitate because of us. I want to go into culinary arts. I see. We have enough savings for you two to go to college, so go ahead without worrying. With the approval of my foster father, I attended a culinary school, where I studied hard and worked part-time at the coffee shop, gaining experience. My younger coworkers respected me as a senior, and despite being busy, I enjoyed my days. Let's work well together from today. After graduating, I continued working at the coffee shop, learning about management in between work hours, and striving to make it a better place. We will always support and cheer for Kelly. My foster parents and sister supported me, and I was more motivated than ever to repay their kindness. This is tough, what should I do? One day on my way to work, I saw a man looking around, seemingly in trouble. Honestly, I hesitated whether to approach him. In these times, it's common to hear stories of getting into trouble by just reaching out. Excuse me, may I help you? After some thought, unable to leave him alone, I approached the man. I'm lost, actually. It turned out he had recently moved to the area and was lost. When I asked where he was going, it was a station midway to the coffee shop. If you'd like, I can show you the way. Really? Thank you so much. We chatted as we walked to the station. His name was Steve Irving, a single man 3 years older than me who had recently moved due to a job transfer. It's embarrassing to get lost at my age, he said with a shy smile, to which I responded with a polite smile. He talked about himself somewhat one-sidedly, and it put me off slightly. Isn't that the station over there? That's right. You've been a great help. He thanked me and then offered me his business card. This is my card. I'd really like to thank you, so please contact me here. It's no big deal, so please don't worry about it. Despite his insistence on wanting to thank me and asking me to accept his gesture, I could only chuckle. If that's the case, I work at the coffee shop up ahead. Why not stop by for a coffee? Yes, I'd love to. Nodding at my words, he quickly entered the station. As I watched him leave, I thought to myself that I had done a good thing as I headed to the coffee shop. Ah, good work today. You seem to be in a good mood, huh? When I arrived at the shop, I was greeted by my coworker, Brian Johnson. Wondering if I had been smiling that much, I told him about what had happened earlier. That was a nice thing to do. Yes, I hesitated, but I'm glad I helped. Nodding at his words, I started my own work. A few hours later. Hello. Oh, it's you from earlier. Steve and an elderly woman entered the shop. She was his mother. And it seemed they had planned to meet at the station. Thanks to you, we were able to meet at the station. While I thought his words were a bit exaggerated, I managed to calm him down and show them to a table after they repeatedly thanked me. I took their order and served them like any other customers. Honestly, I didn't think much of him at the time, he was just a slightly dramatic customer. I ended up coming again. Welcome back. Would you like the usual coffee? Yes, please. Contrary to my feelings, he became a regular visitor, coming to the shop daily and talking to me. Initially, I interacted with him strictly as a server, but gradually, I started to respond more casually. Kelly, would you go out with me? If you're okay with me. Eventually, he confessed, and we started dating. Steve always escorted me like a gentleman. My mother-in-law, who always watched over us with a gentle smile, made me think. We can definitely be happy, and we quickly got married. I will definitely make you happy. Thank you. Steve promised this at our wedding, but that promise was quickly broken. Now that we're married, you'll quit your job, right? What? Right after our honeymoon, Steve asked me this. Confused by his words, he casually said, "My earnings are enough for us to live on, so you should quit your job now." He knew that the coffee shop was originally run by my deceased parents. And that taking over the shop was my dream, something I had clearly told him before we married. But someday, taking over that shop is. When we have kids, you'll end up quitting anyway. I just want to build a happy family with you and our kids as soon as possible. Despite repeatedly trying to convince him, he would ask me daily, "When will you quit?" which eventually broke my spirit. When I told the coffee shop I would resign, they said, "You can come back anytime. And we'll be waiting," as they processed my resignation with regret. "I'll keep the shop safe until you return, Kelly. I'm counting on you." And so, many people regretfully saw me off as I resigned to become a full-time housewife. Ah, right. Starting today, we'll be living with Mom. What? Not long after becoming a full-time housewife, Steve decided on his own that we would live with his mother. While I had no problem living with the kind mother-in-law, I was dissatisfied with not being consulted beforehand. I thought it would be peaceful. But you came as a bride, so you must absolutely listen to me. She changed completely and started to mistreat me. If I cleaned, she would deliberately scatter trash and say, "It's still dirty." If I did laundry, she would drop it on the ground to get it dirty. You really can't do anything. What a useless daughter-in-law. Laughing, she made me clean and do laundry over and over again. If only she had let me cook, it might have relieved some stress. However, she wouldn't let me cook. Who knows what you might put in your cooking? I wouldn't put anything weird in my cooking. Who knows? Besides, Steve likes my cooking better. So, naturally, I should be the one cooking. Indeed, Steve preferred his mother's cooking to mine. "Mom's cooking is the best in the world. Yours is kind of bland." He would always say that. Those words further cornered me emotionally. I had gone to culinary school and even cooked at the coffee shop as a professional. My pride as a former professional was shattered, and I grew mentally exhausted. Honestly, I started to think about divorce. There's nowhere for you to go back to since you're an orphan. After all, even if you return to those kind relatives who took you in as a stranger, what kind of face would they make? Being told that, I became unable to do anything. I was sure my foster parents would support me and help if I asked. But I didn't want to sadden them or trouble them any further. In the end, I couldn't escape and had no choice but to obey quietly. If only I could talk to my sister. Muttering this, I shook my head. My sister was still overseas, helping many patients. I couldn't bother her with my issues. Thinking this, I couldn't even contact my sister. My only hope was about the child. Surely, if we have a child, I can return to work. When Steve forced me to quit, we made a certain promise. So, can I go back to work once the child is grown? Yeah, that's fine. As long as mom's here and you give me a son, you can go back to work. With that promise, I wanted a child. I didn't intend to use the child merely to return to work. I truly wanted to love and be with the child at least until elementary school. So, I braced myself and approached Steve about having a child, but he coldly replied, "I'm tired from work, maybe some other time." Despite his earlier eagerness to have a child, he was uncooperative. That's when I wondered why he chose me. Why did you choose such a girl as your wife? Yeah, she kind of reminded me of my ex-girlfriend, so I chose her. I happened to overhear Steve and his mother talking. Steve's ex-girlfriend. I had been told about her before we married. She was beautiful and smart, but she prioritized her dreams. They had dated during high school, but she chose to study abroad, leading to their breakup. Did he marry me because I resembled his ex-girlfriend? But even if you resemble her in looks, it's not enough. It's fine for just looking. But I can't bring myself to want children with you. With such a useless daughter-in-law, no wonder. Well, she makes for a convenient housekeeper, right? Indeed. Kelly is lucky to be useful to you, Mom. Laughing, the two of them talked like this. Hearing this, I couldn't help but cry. Making me happy was just a lie. Alone, that was all I could mutter. Since then, I've been enduring the daily mistreatment. No matter what was said or done, I would just respond, "Yes, Mother." One day, while I was struggling to carry heavy groceries like potatoes, as ordered by my mother-in-law, someone called out to me. "Kelly? Is that you? Aaron? Is that you?" It's been a while, Aaron. It has been. We've all been worried since we haven't heard from you lately. Aaron is the biological son of the foster parents who took us in. He has always treated me like his real sister, and I respect him like a brother. Just busy with unfamiliar married life, so I haven't had much time. Is that so? Is that why you quit the coffee shop? Startled by his question, I deflected, something like that. But when did you come back to the country? Just recently. I came back alone first. I went to the shop to see you, but they told me you had quit. While saying this, Aaron observed me closely. I averted my eyes. His gaze has always been something neither I nor my sister could withstand. It felt like he could see right through any lie. Is something wrong? Really, it's nothing. Trying to end the conversation and leave, I picked up the groceries, but grimaced at their weight. Are you okay? Need help carrying that? If you could just help me to my house, please. Understanding, Aaron agreed to help. I was worried about my mother-in-law seeing us, but fortunately, she was out. Relieved, I let out a sigh. There's definitely something wrong, isn't there? Seeing my state, Aaron spoke as if he was certain. Yeah, there's a lot. Eventually, I told Aaron everything. Upon hearing my story, anger showed on his face. You should have told us sooner. I'm sorry, I didn't want to trouble everyone. You don't need to worry about that. I'll talk to Mandy too, so prepare to leave this house anytime you want. Nodding at his words, Aaron left the house before my mother-in-law could return. Leave the house. I had given up before, but now there are people willing to help me. For their sake as well, I've decided to divorce Steve. Soon after, my sister called me. I've heard everything. I'm coming to pick you up, so divorce him and come back home. Encouraged by my sister, I decided to take action to divorce Steve. And I presented the divorce papers to Steve just as my sister returned from abroad. I can't endure this any longer. Please let's get divorced. Steve looked perplexed for a moment, but his expression quickly turned to a sneer. Fine by me. In fact, I was going to ask you for a divorce anyway. What? My ex-girlfriend is coming back from abroad. My mother-in-law interrupted our conversation with a condescending laugh. And next to her, Steve wrote his name on the divorce papers and pushed them back at me. I will let Steve remarry his ex-girlfriend. Get lost, you useless person. With a nasty smile, they spoke to me in a mocking way. Watching them, I wondered why I had tolerated this until now. I understand. I have called for a ride, so I will leave shortly. Saying this, I left my in-laws' house with my belongings that I had packed in advance. They followed me, grinning, saying, "Finally, the nuisance is gone. And now, we can finally find true happiness." Ignoring them, I stepped outside just as my sister's car pulled up in front of the house. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Kelly." "Mandy." Seeing the face of the person sitting in the driver's seat, I almost cried. At that moment, huh? That voice is. No, it can't be. Hearing such a voice from behind, I turned around. In response, my sister stepped out of the car with a menacing smile. "What? You must be kidding." The moment they saw my sister getting out of the car, they began to tremble. Their attitudes had completely reversed from before. "It seems you have been very fond of my sister." My sister, placing her hand on my shoulder and glaring at them, spoke in a low voice. "Are you, Mandy?" "Yes, that's right. And I will never forgive you." My sister gave a chilling smile, causing Steve to let out a short scream. I was the only one who couldn't grasp the situation, which confused me. "Oh, you've angered someone you shouldn't have. Aaron? Why are you here?" "I came to help with the luggage." That was explained by Aaron, who apparently came with my sister. Actually, that Steve was our former classmate, a guy who completely misunderstood everything. A guy who misunderstood? No, it's not like that. She and I were dating. Steve interjected Aaron's words, shouting. "That's right. Mandy and Steve dated back in high school. Could you not teach my sister lies? We never dated." It seems that the ex-girlfriend Steve had mentioned was actually my sister. However, I didn't know about any relationship between my sister and Steve because. "Weren't you dating Aaron in high school, sis?" "What?" "That's correct. Indeed, as soon as they entered high school. My sister and Aaron started dating. Now, they are married." "What? You're married?" "That's a lie. Mandy broke up with me reluctantly to pursue her dreams." "Don't twist the truth. I really hate you." "Hate?" Steve froze in shock. In his defense, his mother yelled, "She's just shy and lying." "Yes, I hate him. So I don't want to see his face anymore. Let's go home now." Saying that, she urged me to get in the car. I quietly followed and quickly got into the car. Aaron had already loaded my luggage. "Wait. What?" Steve tried to stop us in a panic, but we ignored him and the car drove off. Even so, I can understand how surprising it must have been for them. That the ex-girlfriend they mentioned turned out to be my sister. However, why were they shaking that much? "There's a reason for that," Aaron said with a wry smile. "He promised to explain everything once we got home, so I decided to rest until then." "Kelly, are you okay?" "We've arrived at home." I woke up to Aaron's voice. It seems I had fallen asleep during the drive. "You were just that tired. Sorry for not rescuing you sooner from that delusional guy and his mother." My sister apologized with a sense of guilt, but I told her not to worry as I got out of the car. I would be staying at my sister and Aaron's new home for a while. "You mentioned earlier when we were leaving about the misunderstood guy. What was that about?" At my question, my sister sighed as if it were bothersome, and Aaron chuckled again. "In high school, we just happened to be on the same committee. Whenever I spoke to him, he misunderstood and thought she likes me because she talks to me." According to my sister, Steve didn't do any of the committee work. So she had to talk to him out of necessity. Others saw this, and despite Steve claiming she must like me, his classmates correctly told him, "You're mistaken, it's because you don't do your work." Despite that, he started insisting Mandy and I are dating. And then his mother showed up. On her way home, Steve and his mother ambushed her saying, "You're dating Steve, right? He's sensitive." When my sister snapped and yelled at both Steve and his mother, they were driven away. She then reported them as stalkers to our foster parents and the school. Steve and his mother were lectured by everyone around. Even after that, he kept saying, "You actually like me, right? And you did that just to get my attention," which made me think, this guy is hopeless. Then came a second showdown. When Steve approached and grabbed her arm, my sister retaliated. She retaliated? At the time, Mandy was saying, "I need to be strong to become a doctor." So she was learning judo. She ended up throwing him. Aaron laughed as he explained. It seems he witnessed my sister throwing Steve, which became a trauma for Steve. And his mother had been scared of my sister since she yelled at them. I was creeped out when he said, "I prefer strong women." Just when I thought this is bad, the opportunity to study abroad came up. Encouraged by everyone, Mandy went abroad, and that finally made him give up. Physical distance made Steve finally give up. Well, not quite giving up perhaps. He probably married me because I resemble my sister. And when he knew she was coming back, he quickly divorced me. What? He knew about my return? My sister was surprised, widening her eyes. That made me realize something too. Why did Steve know about my sister's return? My sister's return was supposed to be later, but she came back early to pick me up. Was he investigating my sister? But then, why didn't he know about her marriage to Aaron? Probably because he doesn't believe in information he doesn't like. Even in high school, he ignored what everyone said. Well, she went abroad right after becoming a doctor. And the wedding was in Hawaii, maybe that's why. That made sense. Steve must have only believed what suited him, ignoring other information. The fact that he had been keeping track of a high school classmate, who wasn't even an ex-girlfriend, was beyond creepy. That's more than just creepy. Really. And now there's one more unforgivable thing. Next time we meet, I'll make sure he regrets it. My sister said this with a cold laugh, and Aaron and I just nervously chuckled. The final showdown with Steve would come 3 days later. Kelly, listen to me. There was nothing between Mandy and me. Steve appeared in front of me that day. I was at the hospital. After all that had happened, I was mentally cornered. And the physical exhaustion from being forced to work to the point of exhaustion. By the daily mistreatment had accumulated, so I was seeing a doctor. Nothing? That makes sense since it was all your misunderstanding. That's right. So, can't we start over? Steve's words filled my mind with disgust. What is this man talking about? Unaware of my feelings, Steve approached me with a sneering smile. You'd be in trouble too if you were suddenly abandoned, right? After being so obsessed with my sister, you switched to me so easily. When I said that, his face went expressionless for a moment. That made me feel he still hadn't given up on my sister. Well, being with me would make you a relative of my sister. You probably thought you could see her any time. That is. You really underestimate me. And by contacting me, you must have finally realized my sister is married. At my words, Steve looked frustrated. I think it's unfortunate that I married such a man. But I feel even more sorry for my sister who is being obsessed over. I would never want to get back with you. I'm truly glad we don't have any children. Being married to me is something special. Steve shouted loudly, perhaps because I had hit a nerve. At that, I sighed. I've noticed since before we married, Steve, you're overly confident. When I first met Steve, he was always talking about himself. Even afterward, all he talked about was bragging or his mother. I work in customer service, so I can hold a conversation decently. However, I'm not the type who always wants others to listen to my stories. And just listening is easier, so I didn't mind much. Well, it's always the same stories with little substance anyway. Shut up. Just listen to me and my mother, and that's all you need to do. Steve tried to grab me as he said this. That's when I stepped back. Enough. Whoa. My sister intervened between us and grabbed Steve's arm, throwing him with a judo move she had learned. It seems those techniques are still with her. Don't touch my sister with your filthy hands. Then, looking at Steve with disgust, my sister yelled at him. Mandy, I really love. I told you, I hate you. You're just obsessed with my face and the fact that I'm a doctor. It's nothing like the love Aaron has for me, who loves my inner self. Saying this, my sister smiled happily. From any angle, there was no room for Steve to enter her life. Still, Steve looked dissatisfied. I wouldn't want a criminal anyway. What? That man. He followed my wife and tried to assault her sister. Just then, Aaron arrived with the police. Seeing this, Steve tried to flee. But he couldn't escape from the police that easily. Screaming, he was taken away by the police. Kelly, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. I'm glad you both are safe. Aaron sighed in relief at our condition. We smiled at him. Later, although Steve avoided a prison sentence, he was ordered to pay me compensation. Because of this, it appears he was also fired from his job. What did you do to Steve? Immediately, his mother called furiously. Knowing her, she really wanted to come after me. But since she didn't know where I was, she had to settle for calling. What do you mean? I had the police take him away. I responded calmly over the phone. Before the divorce, I would only say I'm sorry or yes, I understand. But now I am different. I won't be subdued by her anymore. It's all your fault. If only you hadn't approached Steve. Excuse me, but it was Steve who approached me. I only spoke to him when he seemed in trouble. After that, it was Steve who came closer to me. When Steve was arrested, I was actually at the hospital. And what does that mean? Don't you get it? I got a medical report, and I'm going to sue you both based on that. Originally, I had been writing in a diary about what Steve and his mother had done to me. Not only that, but early on, when Steve and his mother told me things, I recorded it. With those recordings and the medical report, I decided to sue them. Why? We did nothing wrong. Let the lawyers decide that. But just know, I will never forgive you. After saying that, I hung up the phone. I will make sure you both fall into hell thoroughly. Soon after, I formally demanded compensation from Steve and his mother. They apparently tried to hire a lawyer, but well, no lawyer would take their case. I made sure to explain everything clearly. Aaron, being a lawyer, had informed his colleagues about the truth. So nobody would take their case. As a result, they had to pay me a substantial amount in damages. Steve, who had already been paying me compensation, apparently had to take out loans to do so. You didn't love me? The last message I received from him I simply ignored. Shortly after, he went missing after being caught by debt collectors. His mother had to sell her house to make the payments and, with nowhere to go and Steve gone, she now lives alone in a shabby apartment. The detective told me that she cries every day, calling out for Steve. My sister had hired the detective on my behalf. Actually, it was my sister who had gotten Steve fired. She had contacted the company where Steve worked and explained everything about me. Hearing this and the fact that he had caused trouble with the police was the last straw, leading to his dismissal. I feel relieved. Hearing about the downfall of the two who tormented me, I murmured this. Now I can move forward. I was finally able to think this way. Welcome. Since then, I had returned to work quickly and am training at the coffee shop. I am thrilled every day, chasing my dream of taking over the coffee shop. Kelly, would you like to go out to eat tonight? I think that's a good idea. Where shall we go? Currently, I am dating Brian. Right after I returned, he confessed to me. I've always liked you, Kelly. But I held back because I thought I wasn't good enough for you. And then that guy took you away. I won't hold back anymore. Unlike Steve, Brian always listens to my opinions. Thanks to his support, I have been able to move forward. Kelly, will you marry me? Yes. And so, I chose to marry him, to finally be happy. Several years later, I successfully took over the coffee shop, running it with my husband just like my parents did. While looking forward to the day I can stand in the shop with our future child, I stroke my growing belly.